In March 1957, with Lonnie Donegan, Elvis, and Chuck Berry burning in his ears, and armed with the guitar he'd conned Aunt Mimi into buying for 17 pounds, John formed his first group. The band specialized in skiffle, a form of folk music derived from American folk, blues, and jazz.
My original group was named after my school, which is Quarry Bank, which had the Latin logo, ex hoc metallo virtutum, meaning out of this rock. It's symbolic, isn't it? You will find truth. And my first group was called the Quarrymen because we were all from the same school.
The first Quarrymen lineup included John and Eric Griffiths on guitar, Rod Davis on banjo, Bill Smith and/or Len Gary on bass, Colin Hanton on drums, and Pete Shotton on washboard.
We used to play in my back garden. We had an old bomb shelter made out of tin, you know, that had still been left there that used to throw the junk in. We cleared this out, and we all used to crowd into this thing and play, me on the washboard and Len on the bass and John on his guitar and whatnot.
The band played their first gig on June 9th, 1957 at Liverpool's Empire Theatre. Less than a month later, on July 6th, John and the group met another young musician from the neighboring area of Allerton. His name was Paul McCartney, and he was there at the suggestion of sometime Quarrymen bassist Ivan Vaughn, also a mutual friend of John and Pete's. The occasion was a Quarrymen gig at the Woolton Parish Church.
Ivan had come along and brought this friend along who he told us he was bringing along, who he said could play the guitar pretty well. So after we'd finished playing, we came down off the stage and Ivan introduced this kid to us, and his name happened to be Paul McCartney, as we all know now.
In an interview almost 10 years afterward, Paul and John described their meeting like this.
I went with a friend of mine whose name was Ivan. He's a good friend of ours, you see, and I met him years ago. I was at school with Ive, and I went to a village fete with Ivan, and the group that was on the fete, one of them, or a few of them rather, were friends of Ivan's, and that was John and a couple of his mates.
We spent about 20 minutes talking to him. At first it was like very reserved because John was always a bit like withdrawn or a bit careful about meeting new people. He used to like to suss them out. He'd never make the first move. People always had to come to him at first. And eventually Paul came to him by getting his guitar out. Paul, being the extrovert, broke the kind of awkwardness by getting his guitar out and playing, I think it was 20 Flight Rock. And it was good, you know. And John was obviously impressed by this, so we had a bit of a chat for a while, and as I say, about 20 minutes later, we all split up, and John and I were walking home together, and John said to me, what do you think of him then, of Paul? And I said, I think he's okay, I like him. And he said, well, should we ask him to join the band then? And I said, yeah, it's okay by me if it's okay by him. And so that was that. We went home, didn't see Paul again for a while, and just so happened I was the next person to see him. I'd come out my house, he was riding past my house on his bike, he jumped off his bike just to start chatting. We chatted a bit past the time of day, and then it suddenly occurred to me that we had decided to have him in the band. Wow, lucky guy. And I said to him, oh, by the way, Paul, do you want to join the band? And he thought for a minute, very casually, and he said, okay then, and jumped on his bike and rode off.
Well, I try to get over the rest of the machine when it comes to rock and she's the queen. We're looking for a Saturday night.